So David, welcome. I appreciate you taking the trip from Austin. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Loving it here in Florida.
You flew into Fort Lauderdale, and you lived here before?
I did. I lived in Jacksonville for about 10 years.
What years was that?
That would have been from about 2004 to 2014.
How was it? Did you live on the beach or inner city?
No, I lived in the town center area.
Yep.
Jacksonville's huge, so it's all over. But no, it was interesting. It was two different lives, and we'll get into it. I lived the married life there, and there's a lot of married families. But then I also lived the party lifestyle, if you can, in Jacksonville. But back in the early 2010s, the party scene was much bigger there.
Yeah. Was it safe back then, or was it always riddled with crime?
So different sides of town are more safe than others. There's like the north and the west side that are, quite a bit of crime. But where I lived, I felt relatively safe. We just didn't venture to those sides.
Yeah. So where are you from originally?
I was originally born in Vacaville, California area. Mm-hmm. And I lived there till I was about 10 years old.
Did you have siblings? What was early childhood like?
Yeah, I had two real brothers. And then obviously my mom and dad. My parents got divorced at a pretty young age. And the craziest part, I guess, is my first memory growing up is actually my dad strangling my mom. And yeah, I was 4 years old at the time. And my mom had locked my dad out of the house. He was drunk. I don't know if he was on drugs or not, but he did coke quite often. But yeah, he broke back into the house and was, choking my mom. I'm in the living room, watching this and crying and trying to get him to stop. And obviously he did, but that's my earliest, childhood memory.
Holy. And was your father your hero up until that point? I mean, you're 4 years old. You probably can't remember too much, but.
Yeah, I mean, he was like, I did look up to him, not as much when I was 4, but like even despite that, I did. My dad was, he almost played professional baseball. He was scouted by the Reds, but he hurt his arm. So, he'd teach me how to play baseball. But it was weird because like he would shower me he's a very affectionate person when he was around, but he was gone most of the time out partying with his friends. So I was confused as a kid about what love really was because, sometimes he'd be there and he'd like buy me baseball cards, take me to play baseball, whatever else, but then he'd be gone for several days. And I mean, he did prioritize his partying, over us at the end of the day.
Yeah. Did your parents divorce right after the choking incident?
No, my dad actually cheated on my mom, for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the way they ended it is my mom said, if you bring drugs into the house again, I'm going to leave you. And he went with her to buy coke and brought it back to the house. And then the next day he woke up and my mom had packed his stuff basically and, said he was leaving.
Your mom went with your dad to get coke.
Not on from what I understand, not on purpose.
Okay.
They were out and he drove so he blatantly disregarded what she said. Yep. They were just out and he decided to go get the coke with her in the car.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So they break up. How old are you at this point when they divorce?
Well, they said, I guess, they separated or divorced when I was probably 8 or 9, I would say.
Okay. Did that impact you?
It did. So we moved up to Northern California after that. It's a town of about 3,000 people. And my dad didn't really pay child support. So my mom was working 2 to 3 like minimum wage jobs. She was working at our school cafeteria, at a photo shop, I think developing pictures. That's a while back when they were still doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really hard. We just didn't have a lot of money. One year we couldn't afford Christmas presents and all that. So yeah, it was kind of tough growing up until my mom met my stepdad. I think when I was about 10 years old, and then he was in the Air Force, enlisted in the Air Force. So then we moved from California to Rapid City, South Dakota.
Wow.
Yeah, big change.
Huge change. Yeah. And then, so you are now going to a new school at this point.
Yeah. So what basically happened after that is, I think because of like the trauma of everything, my mom became like very strict. stepdad as well with his military background. And we started going to this church. It was like a independent fundamental Baptist, and very different for me from what I was used to. I mean, I go in there and they're talking about how women wearing pants is a sin and Christian rock music is of the devil. And I'm like so shocked about like what's going on here. So I felt like almost cult-like with that. And then I went to like normal schools before high school, but then they put us in this tiny, I call it like a little house on the prairie school. So it's like this double wide trailer with 20 to 25 kids each year. And that's from like kindergarten through 12th grade. And we just all had our desks interspersed, and we're doing self-guided paces. So there's one teacher, I don't think she had a college degree. She would grade our tests, but we're doing these things called paces where we're teaching ourselves all the subjects and then grading our work at this score table. And, she would grade the tests. But yeah, it's a really weird schooling experience, I guess.
So, I'm sorry, it was a religious school that you went to.
Yes,
okay, got it. So it wasn't your traditional public school.
No, it's this tiny
church.
School in a trailer. Like I could be sitting next to a first grader. And when I graduated, I was the only senior, basically. So I had my own little graduation ceremony.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So high school was probably a very odd experience.
High school was an odd experience. Yeah, I felt like an outcast, most of high school because not only that, my parents are very strict with movies, with music, with everything. So the only thing I could really identify with my peers is sports, basically. Other than that, I felt really like an outcast and an outsider.
Did you play baseball like your father?
No, I was not very good at baseball. I played basketball in high school. Oh, and my best sport, it's really not a sport, but I think they call it a sport sometimes. I was the runner-up state junior chess champion in South Dakota. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, that was my best sport, but we can call it a game if you want.
Are you still nasty at chess?
No, I mean, I could still play, but I'm not ranked. I don't play in tournaments or anything anymore.
That's awesome. It is a sport.
Some
strategic. Yeah. And hand movement.
It's debatable.
A nice workout. Yeah. So, okay, during high school, were you drinking or drugging or curious about any kind of substances or?
Oh, not at all. And that's why it's kind of so crazy where I get to from where I started. No, I wasn't around that at all. I never even thought to drink. So very, very different than a lot of other people's stories. So, and then I went to, after high school, I had a choice between, my parents said military or Christian college. So I went to this like very strict Christian college, no touching the opposite sex, separate elevators that you go to. It's actually here in Florida, the college I went to. But so yeah, it's like this very strict chaperoned college. So I did not drink at all in college either. It was a very different experience.
Hey guys, quick update. Every Monday night, I host the Rise Above Recovery meeting. It's an open meeting for any addiction, alcohol, drugs, gambling, food, whatever you're struggling with, you're welcome here. To get the meeting link and weekly updates, just email me at kevin@riseabovepod.com and I'll add you to the list. Also, if this podcast has helped you, please like, subscribe, or leave a rating. It helps us continue to spread the message of hope. Lastly, if you'd like to go even deeper with Rise Above, check out our Patreon. Supporters get access to live interviews and can chat with guests after the interview. Thank you. So, age 20, you're in college. Did you, and I'm sharing this because you shared it with me before we started, but you had an episode.
Yes.
Do you want to go into that?
Yeah. So this is kind of where my life, I'd say, started to change. When I was 20, I had my first depressive episode. So I'm bipolar, but at the time I had no idea of that because this is my first episode. Yeah, I go from being a straight A student to starting to fail my classes. My brain slows down considerably. I don't want to leave my room. I don't want to get out of bed. It's very scary because how I was raised, depression wasn't really taught about and mental health wasn't discussed. So I had no idea what I was going through. I call my parents. They They say it's probably like a sin problem, basically. You know, I'm trying to repent, but I'm not really doing anything wrong to begin with to repent from. I'm a pretty good kid. So finally, like, I've been suffering for a while with this. I finally go see a doctor, and the doctor puts me on my first depressive medication. I think it was Paxil was the first one. But I had terrible side effects with it. So I actually quit taking it after just a few days and had to just ride the depression out, which it lasted a couple months. You know, luckily I didn't fail out of my classes. But it was super scary because I had no idea when it was going to end. And even afterwards, I was like, you know, is this going to happen again? Like, yeah, I didn't know what was wrong with me. So it was a pretty scary experience.
So how long did that episode last for?
I'd say about 2 months.
Okay. And then you ended up just coming out of it?
Yeah.
And then you're happy again and you're enjoying life. What was that transition?
Yeah, I just went back to normal again until, so between basically 20 and 26 years old, I was having there's a period of stability, you know, typically for a few months. And then I'd get hit with another depressive episode, or I call these manic episodes, baby manic episodes, because my manic episodes got wild later, but these were like much smaller ones. So a few months after that first depressive episode, I get this manic episode. I get all this confidence, this grandiose thinking. I decided to travel for the college to like be an evangelist, basically. But I didn't want to do their curriculum. I was like, oh, my stuff's better. So I did my own thing. And ended up getting kicked out of college. The dean of students found out about it, and I got kicked out of Christian college during my first manic episode.
Okay, so when you go into the depressive episode, you're bipolar. You're a complete opposite side of the spectrum.
Yeah. And
when you go into a manic episode, you get all of this confidence. It's the opposite of being depressed.
Yes.
Energy, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's a ton of extra energy. I didn't need a lot of sleep. It's more impulsive behavior. And these are so that was more what I dealt with this time. As my manic episodes got worse, there's a lot of other things with mania, like impulsive spending, sexual promiscuity. About 50 to 60% of bipolar people, they say, have addictions. And we'll get into all of that. But yeah, there's a bunch of things like that. So that's why it's called bipolar, is you're flipping between the two poles.
Okay. So from 20 to 26, you are just going back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
You tried the antidepressant, got off it after a few days when you were 20. What do you think is going on at this over these 6 years? And you said it progressively got worse.
Yeah. So at 26 is when the mania got worse. I don't know, man. It was just really a really scary thing. I went to, several different doctors. The problem so bipolar takes a long time to get diagnosed typically, because most people go to the doctor when they're depressed, not when they're manic. So the doctor just thinks, oh, you're going through depression. Here's a SSRI. That's a type of, depression medication. But, typically with the manic episode, something really bad has to happen for them to figure that out. And that's kind of where we're going with this. But when I was in college, when I was 21, I got married when I was 21. I met a girl in Christian college. And, just to show you how much my life changed, on my wedding night was the very first time I had sex. Same for her. So, that's how strict kind of my background started. So we're married for 5 years. And then at 26 is when everything changed. So I'm working as a financial advisor, but I get this manic episode, and it's way worse than the other ones. This is where like my sex drive went like through the roof, basically. I'd probably drank 5 times in my life, just tried it when I was with my dad or whatever. I'd never been to a club, didn't even really know what that was. But all of a sudden I'm changing. I'm going to like get beer with the guys at work. Then finally this girl approaches me at work and invites me out. And I was not used to girls talking to me at all. I was, so that's just not what happened. So being manic, sex drive through the roof, I went with her. And while we're out, I actually got kind of drunk for my first time when I was 26 years old. And that's kind of, this is probably the most shame I have from things I did when I'm bipolar. But I ended up cheating on my wife / ex-wife, with her. And then it's crazy with the mania. I didn't even really feel any remorse afterwards. At that time, I felt a ton later. I just went home the next day though, and, told her what happened, packed my stuff and ended up leaving. That's where my life completely changed. I move out and I go from never going out, never going to bars, never going to clubs to I'm partying like 6 nights a week now and learning, what bars are, what clubs are, what goes on here. But this is at 26 that my life completely changes. And my family and friends, I was like unrecognizable to them based on what they were used to.
So, okay, let's back up for 1 second. You go right back to your wife and you tell her what had happened the night before.
Yes.
What was her reaction?
Man, it was awful. She's obviously crying and saying, she couldn't believe I did this. She thought we had a good life together, man. I feel terrible about all that. But so she's basically just bawling her eyes out. And I don't know, like when I was manic, it was it's very self-centered type thinking. You don't always feel the emotions that you feel later. That's why there's so much shame if you talk to most bipolar people, there's a lot of shame for things they did when they're manic because they are out of, like, we have to take responsibility for our actions, but a lot of things we do are like so out of character from what we normally do. So there's so much shame when we come out of these episodes.
Now, of course, you're more one is inclined to be more promiscuous when in a manic episode. But I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your feedback on this. You waited to have sex until you got married at 21.
I did.
Do you think getting it out of your system and having sex with other people when you're 17, 18, 19, 20 would have relieved and maybe that night wouldn't have happened?
I do. That's a very tough question. I think that night still would have happened because the sexual promiscuity was, the sex drive was so high because as you'll see more and more from my story, there was a lot of that kind of came out and manifested. Now, but with what you're saying, I do think that a lot of people that wait till marriage or don't have sex when they're younger do end up, cheating or just because, they always wonder, is the grass greener over here? They never sowed their wild oats. So I do think that happens. But in my case, I think this was going to happen at some point, no matter what.
I actually need to ask you this too.
Okay.
So you wait to get married. What was sex like for the first time and you're married? Was it like awkward or was it weird? Whatever you're willing to share.
Yeah, it was. I think it was kind of awkward. And the reason I say that is because I think when you're taught something is wrong for so long, it almost feels a little wrong or dirty as you're doing it. So it took some getting used to, honestly. It was weird. I mean, it was good. Yes, it felt good, but it was like good and weird at the same time, I guess is how I describe it.
For sure. Okay, so you then pack up, you bring this to your wife, you leave, you guys get a divorce.
Well, we are starting to get a divorce, but then, so another symptom of my mania is you fall in love fast. So I'm not even divorced. I'm starting to get divorced. And then I meet this foreign au pair or nanny, and she's like a Mexican nanny. I fall in love with her while I'm still married. My the nanny does not know that I'm married though, but she springs on me that I think we've been dating a couple of months at this time. But she's like, "Hey, I have to go back to Mexico if we don't get married." And I was like, okay, let's get married, while I'm still married. So I fly to Mexico with her. I meet her whole family. They throw this big party for us. I ask her, I was like practicing my broken Spanish. I ask her mom, permission. Mom says yes. We have this like big Mexican party there. We even have like mariachi and all that. And no one knows, that I'm still married at this time. And I guess in my head, I was like, I'll be divorced before anyone finds out or before all this. Because you're manic. Nothing you do really makes sense. So we fly back and we're ring shopping. And that's when my very worst depressive episode hit me at that time. Just and out of the blue. So sometimes with bipolar, you can point to a cause for your episodes, but this one, none. I was happy, everything was fine, but then I get hit with this depressive episode again, and it's the opposite of the high sex drive type thing, which is very hard for your partner to understand when you're bipolar. Like my sex drive went from here to basically non-existent. So the nanny is thinking, you don't love me anymore, this and that, because I have zero sex drive at that point. And I don't want to leave the house. I'm not fun anymore. So it's very hard for someone to understand. But during this episode, things got very, very, very dark. And that was the first time that I was actually suicidal. And I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about.
You can talk about whatever you want.
Okay. So yeah, each day, like on my lunch break, I lived right by work. I would drive home and stand in my garage and try to get up the courage to flood it with carbon monoxide. There was sleeping pills. I kept pouring into my hand, but I obviously didn't quite go through it. That I came close, several times, and it's not that I wanted to die. It's hard to explain to people that haven't suffered through it. It's like this mental pain that you want to end, but you don't know how, you don't know when. And also with this, I couldn't sleep at all. It's such a hard thing because you're tired all the time and lethargic as bipolar, but then you also can't sleep either. So that exacerbated things even more without being able to sleep. And finally at my wit's end, I did not know what to do, but I finally decided I'm going to pack a bag and go to a mental hospital. So I pack a bag and drive to the mental hospital. And the nurse was surprised. She said most people don't pack their own bag. They're normally like taken by someone. I didn't know what to pack, obviously. She takes my razor. She takes my shoelaces. She takes like a bunch of my stuff. And then it's very scary to go there to the mental hospital, though, because I didn't know if I'd be stuck there, like how long I'd be there. But I finally decided I would rather, give it my best shot at life instead of ending things.
What year is this?
This would have been in 2011.
Okay. So 2011. Now you give this a go. How long are you in the hospital for?
I think it was about 5 days.
Okay.
But this is while I was in the mental hospital is when I was finally diagnosed with bipolar. And this is when I'm 27 years old now. So the doctor comes and he wants to know everything that's going on. And now finally I've done all these crazy manic things. I tell him about the nanny, still married, trying to get married, the partying out of nowhere, the cheating on my wife. And when I explain all these things, it finally clicks. And he tells me I'm bipolar, not just depressed. And honestly, it was like a relief, is how I felt about it, being able to finally put a name on something instead of just am I crazy? I felt somewhat relieved about it. And that's when he put me on meds, that at least helped enough that I could, become no longer suicidal and then leave the hospital after like 5 days.
Yeah. So you leave the hospital, you're now on the meds. Where do you go from there?
Yeah. From there, I was on a depressive med that worked somewhat, but when it came to the mania, after I got out, he wanted me just to start with the depressive medication, but then he put me on a medicine for my mania. I think it was lithium was the first one. And lithium, man, it it's different for each person. That's what's so hard about mental health. But for me with the lithium, it made me like a walking zombie. Basically, I felt like I was in The Walking Dead, just like,
Yeah.
So I quit taking it, pretty quickly. And then I was just thrown back into another manic episode. And this my episodes kept getting progressive. Like my manic episodes started getting progressively worse and worse. And this is the one where I started using drugs for the first time.
What kind of drugs were you using?
The very first drug I used would have been, we thought it was Molly in Miami. So I went with some work friends and like a pharmacist that I hung out with. And we ended up trying to roll at it was David Guetta at Club Live. Yeah, that's my first foray into drugs. And at first I had I've rolled a lot, so I know what it feels like. At first you had all those sensations, the music, the lights, everything, but then all of a sudden everything changed and I lost complete control of myself. So I'm climbing over VIP tables and just grabbing random people's bottles and drinking it and just staring them down. I felt kind of aggressive, but also good. I'm trying to make out with everyone around me, girls, guys, whatever.
Yeah,
and I'm straight. So that's not normal behavior.
Out of character.
Yeah. But then after we leave, I'm just feeling crazy. And I said, I'm going to wander the streets, kill or be killed. And I don't even talk like that. So my friends locked me in my room. And this is during the whole Miami bath salts time. So we basically, find out later that they, this is not Molly. This stuff was lace. So good thing nothing happened. This right when that guy ate the guy's face off. So I don't know what would have happened to me if I'm just wandering the streets out there.
So you never figured out what it was?
They tested it and they said it was probably bath salts, I guess.
Oh my
I don't know what else was in it, but yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a night on Molly to me, for me at least. No,
But the aggressive part was, the rest of it was normal, but the aggression and, the kill or be killed type stuff,
Yeah.
that's not my normal Molly experience.
I was aggressive on Molly.
Were you?
Yeah. I was, oh my God. I was loving, I was bipolar.
Okay, so you
Molly.
became bipolar. All right. All right.
Okay, so where does it go from here? You start to spiral.
Yeah. So after the Molly, I start doing coke. It took me a while to get into coke. I was scared of that at first, but now I'm manic. So I finally tried coke, and that's the one I got hooked to. Because the first time I did it, I was I love what, I love this euphoric, just energetic feeling. And that's when I started using pretty much every day. It turned into very quickly. And then things just spiraled further because along with the coke, I'm meeting these new party friends. And this is where I started to get involved in white collar crime at this point.
So, sorry, before you go into that part,
Yeah.
I just want to break it down. So you were in Miami for the Molly thing. Where are you living now as your drugs start to ramp up?
I'm in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, so you're in Jacksonville. This was the time that you were in Jacksonville.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Was the coke kind of suppressing the manic episodes? So for someone who has a lot of energy and you give them a stimulant, it brings them down.
Not with me.
Okay.
No, the coke was putting me on a whole
another manic level.
Mania and coke. I was on a much higher level. So now everything I was doing is more exaggerated. My sexual impulsivity is through the roof. My impulsive decision making, all of that just went to the roof basically.
Were you doing coke through your depressions as well?
This is the first time I started, but later on I did try to do coke to try to kick the depression.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the same feeling typically as with the mania. It was obviously way more fun during the mania. It didn't seem to help that much with my depression most of the time.
Got it. So you start getting into white collar crimes. What year is this and what were you doing? How did it all start?
Yeah, so the crime, so I fast forwarded a little bit, but the crime started in 2014 now is where we're at. And basically what happened is I get with some party friends. They tell me about this pharmaceutical sales scheme that's going on. I don't know if you want me to go into the details or not. Just quickly, it was, I don't know if you've heard of this, being in Florida, but there were these compounding creams. These creams, if you put the right ingredients into them, they could bill out like a ridiculous amount of money to an insurance company. And so yeah, my company had figured out how to do that. And then some of these creams could bill out like $10,000 to $20,000 a month to the insurance company, and we would get a 20% cut of that, basically. So most insurance companies stopped. They figured it out. They do normally, but the government insurance, TRICARE, did not figure it out, I guess, right away. So we're basically, I get involved with them, and we're basically paying patients that have TRICARE insurance to go to the doctor and get these prescriptions, or paying doctors to write the prescriptions. And I mean, because just for the $10,000 prescription, if I'm making 20%, I'm pulling $2,000 a month off this prescription, maybe paying the other guy $500. So, I'm making like $1,500 on the smaller ones, up to like $4,000 on some of the larger prescriptions.
How many prescriptions were you filling a month on average?
It wasn't even a crazy amount. I would say it got up to like around 20 people or so.
Okay.
But then it'd filter on and off. Some people were able to get like one prescription. Some people were able to get, we tried to get everyone to get 6-month prescriptions if possible. But yeah, it was, I could have probably done more, but honestly, like I wasn't trying to make money. I was trying like I never looked into the consequences of this. I only wanted the money so I could party more.
Yeah.
I didn't want to buy a nice house. I wasn't scheming to do anything. I just wanted money to fuel my partying. And this is when I finally was able to party how I always wanted. I'm, going to Miami and getting bottle service all the time, going to Vegas, and I'm finally partying to the level I wanted to. So that was the whole reason I did this. I quit my job I was a financial advisor, but I very quickly started making more money doing this. And I don't know the exact amount. I don't have my bank statements, but I know I made over $500K in 1 year. Not sure the exact amount.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing 20 prescriptions, and if there's an average of 20 to 10,000 per prescription, call it $15K as an average per prescription, right? That's $30,000 in commission at 20% on a monthly basis. Like that's a lot of money. Definitely, you could live a good lifestyle doing that. So you did it for 1 year?
It went a little over a year.
Okay.
But then in May of 2015, that's when everything changed in my life. So I'm driving on the way to work, and I get a phone call from my buddy who worked in the insurance company across the hall, and he said that there were like FBI agents all over my office, and I didn't believe him at first. I thought he was messing with me. So he had to tell me a couple more times, and finally, I get it through my head and believe him. So I swing my car around, drive home, like lock my door, and I'm like, oh shit's about to, totally get real here. So I ended up I did some coke because I'm freaking out. Mm-hmm. I basically got anything that I thought was evidence, threw it in my car, and I'm like driving around to different dumpsters, throwing stuff away, and thinking I'm being like this mastermind, trying to throw it in different dumpsters so I won't get caught. And then I basically went home to await my fate after that.
How long after until they came to your house?
They actually didn't come to my house. My buddy came to my house afterwards. He had been there, and he said basically that they took his phone, they took all the computers, they took everything, and then they were like even looking through the ceiling tiles at our work also. They never came to my house though. I think they were more raiding the office at this time. And but that's when I had to lawyer up. So me and my buddy went and got a lawyer, and come to find out we were facing up to 7 years. Well, he was facing more than me because he actually made a lot more than I did. But I was facing up to 7 years because it's not about how much you make. It's about how much you cost the government. And like I said, I don't know the exact amount I made, but I cost the government $3.7 million is what they say, because that was the total amount of fraud that I'd basically done.
Okay, so they ransack your office.
Yeah,
and they didn't arrest anyone at that point. So they probably had a warrant to go in there. They go through all your shit. When do you actually get arrested?
And we'll probably, I can fast forward to tell you that, but then there's a bunch we have to talk about that happens between. So it actually was 4.5 years after that before, so they were building a case. It took 4.5 years before I actually had to come back to Jacksonville and basically deal with this. But a lot happened between then and now, basically. I mean, between then and the 4.5 years.
So 2015 is when they went into your office.
May of
you
15,
don't hear back from them again until 2019, essentially.
I hear back from them. I did have to go in one time for a proffer hearing where they basically show you everything they have against you, and in hopes that you'll plead guilty.
Okay.
But you don't have to make a decision at that time. So they did do that, but then I didn't have to make a decision on it. But it wasn't. So 4.5 years later is when I ended up pleading guilty to this. That's kind of when they basically are like, all right, you need to make a decision. But during the proffer, they had so much shit against us. It was like a mountain of evidence. So I knew I wasn't going to beat it. You don't beat Fed cases very often.
So what happens between 2015 and 2019 when you go in there and plead?
Yeah, that's where. So I think a normal person would have slowed down. My lawyer was very clear. You need to slow down. Don't do anything, to get in trouble. But I did not listen. I'm in a depressive episode, obviously, after all that. And I think anyone would be with the FBI thing. But then I did end up, as a depressive episode started, I ended up going to Vegas and did like a 12-night bender there. I was able to kick my depression. I was hoping to just become stable, but I threw it into this major manic episode. My buddy who I went with went home after like 3 or 4 days, and I partied, my face off for 12 straight nights in Vegas, like by myself with all my new friends. And the new friends, I say that loosely. But then I come back manic again. And at that point, I'm just wild. I'm getting banned from all the bars in Jacksonville. I got banned from my favorite bar, which we were supposed to go to for 4th of July. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to Miami by myself. I flew in this girl from New York that I'd met, and we're partying in Miami, and her and I get in this big falling out. Basically, we get in a fight. She had been sleeping, and I went out without her and brought all these people from Club 11 back. I leave the room to go buy some more alcohol, and I guess she wakes up to random people having sex in our room. So of course she leaves. Mm-hmm. But then I had met this other girl there, and this is the mania again. I fall in love with this girl after knowing her for like 2 days in Miami. At this point, I'm moving back to Austin. I'm moving to Austin with my buddy. And after knowing her like a couple days, I'm like, hey, do you want to move in with me in Austin and be my girlfriend? And she was living with her boyfriend at the time. Like she was on a girls' trip in Miami, but she breaks up with her boyfriend back in Baton Rouge. I drive this like U-Haul truck, get all her stuff, and she moves in with me in Austin, after like knowing this chick a couple days, basically.
Wow, the old 2-day fall in love story. I love it. Okay, so this is insane. Okay, you meet this girl, she moves in. Now it's you, your buddy, and this girl all living in this apartment in Austin.
Right. Yeah, right now it's my buddy in the infamous spare bedroom, which we'll talk about soon.
What did your friend say when you were like, oh, I met this girl and she's moving in?
This was my best buddy that also got in trouble with the FBI. So by now he knew I was just ridiculous. He knew I'm a ridiculous person. So I don't know, he was just used to this.
He was with it, whatever.
Yeah, he was with it. So yeah, we're living there, me, him, and then her little Pomeranian Cujo.
Mm-hmm. But what year is this? Sorry.
This would have been 2015.
Okay.
So then, as you can probably guess, she ends up cheating on me also. Shocker. I think the main reason she cheated on me though is I fell into a depressive episode kind of out of the middle of nowhere again. Mm-hmm. And So again, I'm not acting like my normal self. I'm a total downer. Can't really have no sex drive and all that. So, I mean, I get why she cheated on me. I wish she would have just told me she was leaving. But yeah, she cheats on me. I kick her out. And my buddy and I had come to Austin to try to do another pharmaceutical thing. This one was legal though, or so we thought. But then we found out from the pharmacy that, it was a no-go. So he moves back to Florida. And this is when, instead of listening to my lawyer, I decided that I was going to buy into an after-hours nightclub now, because I was like, my favorite thing to do is party. I had just fallen back into another manic episode after I broke up with my girlfriend. So yeah, I decided to buy this after-hours nightclub. Like, me and one other guy invested. It was like a smaller nightclub, held like 305 people. But yeah, it was off the main, drag there in Austin. So I buy this nightclub, and that's when things went out of control, like completely, because I'm partying in my own club, every night that it's open. The other manager's mad at me because I'm getting like the main section in the back and just partying in it. I'm not trying to make money yet. Like, I could care less about money. I just wanted to party in my own club. And that's when I started, meeting some different characters. First of all, I'm at the strip club, and I see the most like beautiful dancer I've ever seen. And oh man, we had this moment, and then I'm like, I have to buy you a drink. And she said, you can't buy me a drink. I'm like, why not? And she hadn't looked down yet. She points down to her ankle, and there's an ankle monitor. And I don't know, I thought it was awesome, honestly. I was like, this girl is so dope. So I fell for her quickly, man. She also had a boyfriend, but she moves out of this guy's house, moves in with me, and we like quickly fell in love also. So now it's her and I. But then that's when I start quickly meeting all these other characters. So I had a regular dealer, like just a normal guy, but I don't know why I got traded. But my dealer traded me to another dealer. Like, I don't know, maybe the other guy had more product, because I was going through a lot of product. But the dealer and I like partied together all day, and he spent the night at my house, which turned into like several days of partying. And so basically him and the dancer were the only two I felt that could keep up with me. But yeah, the second day that he's at my house, we go across the street to the liquor store. I'm a big Ciroc fan. I find out he's a Ciroc fan too. And, we buy a bottle of Ciroc. We're drinking that. And he shows me apple Ciroc. And I'm like, dude, this is like the best shit I've ever had. And then he's like, that's why they call me Ciroc Poppy.
Oh my
And that's
God.
how I basically met Ciroc Poppy. And I make a lot of TikTok videos about Ciroc Poppy. But yeah, he was a character. So he moves into my house basically. So now he's in my spare bedroom, and me and the dancer, are basically in the other room, which was a terrible idea because
you think?
Yeah. My product is just a few feet away instead of a phone call away where the dude's always late. It's right there in the other room.
Bro, it's you, a stripper, and Ciroc Poppy.
Yes.
You think that's a bad idea? I mean, but I will say, caught up in the grips of addiction and, the bipolar episodes that you were experiencing, that's right in line with what we do, right?
Yeah.
It's right in line with what we do. And there's no reason, there's no thought. It's just like, fuck it. Let's do it. Sounds like a great idea.
At the time it did, because and so at that point I started doing the most drugs I'd ever done, because it's like right there, and he's partying with me. It's probably the perfect situation for him. He basically gives me a discount on the blow, and then he gets to live with me and sell me even more. Basic. I mean, I'm getting a discount, but I know the deal was better for him than for me.
So the girl, she was a stripper
Yes.
at your club. Where
no,
did you?
at a different club. My club was called The Vault. It was off 5th and Congress in Austin. This is back in 2016.
Got it.
It's been closed for a long time.
Okay.
But no, she was a stripper at a different club.
Was she sleeping with other men?
I don't think so. Not that I know.
To your knowledge.
To my knowledge,
They always do.
I'd like, and we'll get into the story more. And then there's a reason. Dude, she was actually like one of the. You're gonna be surprised, but she was one of the best girls I've ever dated. Like,
really?
Yeah, we dated for 4 years. Yeah,
and she stripped the entire time.
No, she stripped for at least a year of it.
Okay,
I don't know the exact amount, but she stripped for at least a year of the 4 years.
Okay. So you're living in Austin. It's 2016. Mm-hmm. You have the nightclub. You have fucking Ciroc Poppy living at your house. You're a drug dealer. You're doing mainly coke, right?
Mainly coke. I mean, we'll do whatever we get our hands on but I mean, coke was my favorite drug. Mainly coke, Molly, ecstasy, things like that. That was my main stuff.
So when does this all implode?
Well, it gets even worse from there. We start moving in other people too. There was this bouncer named Shelby that ended up, I guess he needed a place to stay. So I let him sleep on the couch. And then there's these other 2 kids that Ciroc Poppy hired to hit a lick and didn't go according to plan. I guess they got caught on camera. So they needed a place to stay. He said they weren't safe. So I've got those 2 guys also sleeping at my house. Then he introduces me to this guy we call Meth Head David, who said he was a lawyer, but he really wasn't. I should have known, he's always borrowing my clothes and all this weird stuff. So he's staying there some of the time too. So I've got like this whole house basically of characters that are coming in and out now.
So you have Meth Head, what's his name?
Meth Head David, another
Meth Head David.
Yeah.
You have the 2 boys hit a lick.
Yeah.
You have the bouncer Shelby.
Yeah, we call him the Ciroc boys.
Poppy.
Yeah.
Ciroc Poppy with the Ciroc boys and stripper.
Yeah.
Okay, where did just go? I don't. Where does it go from here?
Okay, so Ciroc Poppy and I had a falling out. Well, actually, before that, so me and the other guy owned the nightclub, right? But obviously he hated me. I wasn't trying to do any work properly. One night, Ciroc Poppy and I accidentally locked ourselves in the office, which was our drug den, basically. So he was mad about that. We just used the office to do drugs with ourselves, chicks, whatever. But we got locked in there and we were freaking out because we were on coke. So I threw a chair through the window of the office, busted that. I did a bunch of stuff that pissed the other owner off, basically. I was the worst owner ever. So he let me buy him out of the club. But once I owned the club by myself, it just went downhill. All the other employees quit. They didn't want to work for me. And then I just started hiring my random friends. I let Ciroc Poppy be the manager one night. And that's when we had our falling out because I thought I think he stole money from me. I thought at least the money seemed light. So, I'm banging on the door to try to get my money. He's in there sleeping with another girl. Gets mad though, opens the door, sucker punches me, and I end up kicking him out at that time. But then it just descends even further because I have no one to work at my club. So I meet these other people, let them start working for me. And that's when I met T-Rex and Old Girl, and then a couple other people. And they start... T-Rex convinced, I keep losing my keys for the condo, right? So I'm scared, my landlord's threatening to kick me out. And again, I'm manic. This will not make sense to you at all. But T-Rex convinced me that his friend Old Girl could stay at my condo and watch the place while I was gone in exchange for doing tricks in the spare bedroom. So I now have this prostitute basically staying at my place with the random guys coming in and out. T-Rex, his friends Bert and Edgar. So I have this whole new cast of characters that ends up moving in. And as you can probably guess, my stuff gets robbed. It's just not a good situation.
this is just because you're manic? It doesn't make sense.
No, a
that you
manic
would-
drug addict. Well, I think that it's the drugs and the mania, but the mania makes your rational decision making just is not there at all. So I think fueled by the coke and that, like none of this stuff, looking back, none of it makes sense. But
Yeah.
at the time, I guess it made sense to me.
Yeah. Where did you get the money to buy half and go in with a partner for this club? And then you ended up buying him out.
Yeah. So the club wasn't that, this is not as expensive because, so we don't own the building. We're paying rent and we like own the equipment. So I bought into the club originally for like $80,000.
Okay.
And then I bought him out. But I had made, over $500K on the.
Got it.
They never had they hadn't taken my money. So I had the money from the fraud stuff.
Yeah. Well, this was before you pleaded guilty in 2019.
Yeah. And this is 2016, obviously, when things aren't as crazy expensive. So yeah, I still have my money and I'm just like blowing through it. And finally, this is when like everything crashes around me. I wasn't looking at my bank account. I didn't really know how fast I was blowing through money. But finally, I end up finding out my bank account's overdrawn. Like, yeah, I go from, I didn't even realize I had run out of money, but like, yeah, my bank account gets overdrawn. Then I ended up not being able to pay the rent on the club anymore. And then very shortly after that, my ex and I, the dancer, got evicted from my condo. So within the space of a year, I blew through all that money, lost everything, and became basically homeless. I would have been completely on the street, but she was still working. And so we're staying out of cheap motels. And, if she has to make enough money on our night shift or we have no money, basically.
This is all happening in Austin.
This is all in Austin.
Okay. So you're now bouncing around from motel to motel.
Yep.
And in some cases, some nights you're homeless.
We luckily pretty much most all the time we were able to stay out of like a Super 8 or some cheap. We were able to scrounge up money most of the time. So
Yeah.
I never slept on the street, but that's why I call it like basically homeless though. So yeah, it got really dark because obviously then my mania finally went away into another deep depression, and I couldn't get any more coke because I couldn't afford it. So before that, my ex was making a ton of money as a stripper, but she was trying to keep up with me and party. And obviously, if you're using a bunch of drugs, you're not taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We're both like whacked out and not doing well. So she's not making much money anymore. That's why we're like living out of these hotels. And so I brought her down, with me. And this is why I say she was a good girlfriend for me. And I still hold her in high regard. I would have thought she would have left me. I go from being this fun guy that owns a club to someone that can't even get a job. I'm failing because I'm depressed. I'm bombing every job interview I go to, and she's supporting me. And she did not leave me during that time.
Wow. When does she eventually leave you?
She actually never left me. I broke up with her later, but I mean, I'll get to that part in a second. So finally we're able to get enough money to get a small studio apartment. To show you another case of my mania and just not thinking straight, I left all our furniture, most all of our belongings in the nice condo that we lived in, and it was just gone. So we basically only had like 2 suitcases with us. So we move in. All we have is an air mattress for furniture, and then like cheap food, peanut butter and jelly, ramen, and all that. So I go from this lavish life of owning a club to living out of this like tiny apartment with just an air mattress. But that's where things start to get better, because a little while after that, I go to see a psychiatrist, which I still have today. And he finally put me on the right meds for me. So I think at this point I was like 32 or 33 years old, somewhere around there. So from 20 to 33, I hadn't been able to find the right meds. I'd recycled through a bunch of stuff, but I was finally able to get on the right meds, and it completely changed my life, completely. Within, it's like a month or so, I felt stable, and I became a completely, different person. And everyone's sobriety journey is different. Mine is, my Coke addiction was very much tied to my bipolar. I still consider myself an addict because I've like messed up since then, but hardly. So after about a month of being on the right meds, I was able to kick the Coke addiction, and my brain's finally thinking right. And I was actually able to go get a good job after bombing over 20 different job interviews while I was depressed. So I was able to completely, turn my life around at that point.
Is this 2018 now at this point?
So this would have been, I got the new job in January of 2018. So this would have been January of 2018.
Beginning of 2018.
Yeah, I got a finance job, got back into finance, and just started crushing it again like before.
Okay, so you put the Coke down, and do you have, after you get on the medication and you get everything, on the right track from a mental health standpoint, do you then get any urges to do Coke again after that? We'll get to 3 years ago, but yeah. I'm talking about like immediate 2018, or even the lifestyle. Are you missing the lifestyle?
So the way I would describe it is, because I hit such a low, I did a couple things that helped me. I changed my environment, first of all. So like I had to delete any dealer's number out of my phone. I stopped going to after parties. I stopped going places where I knew drugs would be. So I think the biggest thing for me was I had to make new friends. I had to change my environment. But after doing that, it was a lot easier. Because if I would have been around it and drinking, I would have wanted to do it for sure. So just changing all that. And why I was able to change that, I think, is I hit such a low that I think a lot of people like look back and kind of glamorize the fun, but I tried to look back at the bad times, and those were so much worse. And living out of those hotels, living with just an air mattress for quite a while in that apartment. Then we couldn't even afford furniture, so we finally were renting furniture from like one of those rental stores. So like when you hit a low like that, I think if you can concentrate more on that than the good times, that's kind of what really helped me for the most part.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when you hit your bottom and it's bad enough, you then make that decision.
Yeah.
You're going to stay sober. You're going to stay clean. Gamblers, they're going to stop gambling and seek a new way to live. I think, planning for contingencies down the road by changing your community, your friendship, your friends, your circle of people that you're running with, your environment. So how much longer did you stay with the girl after you stopped doing Coke?
I broke up with her in right before COVID. So I guess that would have been 2020.
March 2020-ish?
Yeah. And I can say the reason we broke up so I actually haven't, I still hold this girl in high regard, and she's doing great now. But after her father passed, unfortunately, as happens with a lot of people, she kind of fell back into her addiction, and it was just really hard. I gave it like a year, basically, of really trying to be there for her, really trying to be that support, urging her to get help. But it was, like getting worse and worse. She'd be blacking out all the time. So I got like anxiety from it. And you asked earlier about the cheating thing. Like this is the time when I would have been concerned, because, when you're blacked out, all bets are off. I know that she was a loyal girlfriend at this point, when she wasn't drinking, but it was just so much anxiety for me that as a bipolar person that was stable, the most important thing in my life was protecting my peace. So I had to protect that. And I gave it like a year because I loved the girl, and I still care about her, but I had to break up with her. And the good thing about that is she still lives in Austin, so I know what's going on with her, but she's in a great relationship now. She obviously doesn't dance anymore. She has a good job. Not that that's a bad job, but she has a good job that she's always like the job she's always wanted now. She has another kid she has one kid, another kid on the way. So the story worked out for her in the end, and I have nothing but love for her.
It's very mature of you to say that. Okay, so where do you go once COVID hits?
So I guess to go, because we didn't talk up. So in 2019, I think it was, is when I finally go plead. Me and my buddy decided to both plead guilty. So at that point, we are both we're both put on probation at that time. So I'm still in Austin on probation now at this time. And, I'm working my finance job, but because I got the job before I pled, it didn't come up on my background check. But so I guess in 2019 is when I officially pled for my felonies. So yeah, I'm just working there basically, and I was trying to be the best version of myself. But then in 2023, I ended up they ran what they called a routine background check. It took them, I guess it took 5 years, but they found out about my my court case, and they actually ended up firing me from my finance job.
When was that?
That would have been 23.
Beginning of 23?
Yeah.
Okay. They fire you?
They fired me.
And during that time, you were doing well. You were on probation. How many years were you on probation for?
In all, I ended up being on probation. I think it was like 5 years.
Okay. And that's all they gave you is probation?
Well, at this time, at this time, because I'm on probation waiting for my sentencing at this time. So I haven't been sentenced. I'm just on probation.
Okay.
But actually, I'm trying to think when that would have been. So I think, in 2022, actually, I had my first sentencing date. So if you do the math, May of 2015, FBI raided my office. This is like this is now 7 years later. I finally, this has been hanging over my head the whole time, which besides the bipolar, this is probably the hardest thing I had to deal with is, every day of my life for 7 years, I could be going to prison for, who knows how long. And at my sentencing, at this sentencing in 2022, apparently the judge didn't realize the extent of my bipolar, because as you get to give a speech, obviously, before you're sentenced. By this time, I think because we pled early and all that, the prosecutors now recommending a 2.5-year sentence for me. They had wanted me, at first they had thought about asking me to to testify against the other witnesses. But when I went to the proffer, I was actually high when I met with the FBI for the proffer. I was on Xanax and Coke. So they knew I would have been like the worst person to ever testify. So luckily I didn't, they didn't even ask me to testify. But because I pled early, they're basically recommending 2.5 years at this point, which is still a long time.
Yep.
But when I'm talking to the judge, she's looking at me like she doesn't know what I'm talking about when I'm telling her about my bipolar. And then I realized the probation officer had never given her my records of my my mental hospital stay, all the stuff from my doctor. So she lets me bring it to her. And my lawyer said he's never seen this in any other case, but instead of sentencing me, she said that she needed time to look over everything and she'd have to reschedule my sentencing for a later date. So I think that ended up really helping, her seeing that all this bipolar stuff happened before the crime. So yeah, I probably would have got 2.5 years right there in court. But thankfully, she looks at the records and decides to wait on my sentencing.
So when do you go back for your second sentencing?
My second sentencing was actually just last year.
Okay.
December of 24. So 9.5 years after it's the longest case longest federal case he's ever been a part of. Okay. A lot of crazy things happened with this case that I think worked in my favor. My boss ended up getting off completely because the government, and I'm not going to say if he was involved or not, but the guy that they considered the boss, basically, the government had messed up some stuff with witnesses. So his lawyer was able to get his case thrown out. So the guy who they thought is the main guy, his case gets thrown out completely. And a bunch of other things like that happened. So not only is the bipolar working in my favor, but the 9.5 years and the screwed up case, it's on its third prosecutor now. It's gone so long. So finally, when I went in for this one, I still didn't know what to expect, but I was like, it's got to be better than 2.5 years, just because of the sheer length of the case and all that. But this time in court, it was a much better outcome. They recommended times. The prosecutor recommended time served for me this time. And the judge gave that to me. So I ended up doing 5 years of probation, but I didn't end up doing any time. And it's crazy. This worked out so well for everyone. There was like 13 of us that they considered the top people. 11 of us got nothing. And 2 of the people that were basically at the top, like made way more money than me. I don't even know if they would have got anything, but they both had prior felonies. So one got a year and one got 4 months. Wow. So almost nobody in my case really got time because of just the nature of all of it.
Did you have to pay restitution?
That is the other crazy part. The judge was really in our favor. So I do not have to pay the $3.7 million because I guess the prosecutor could not prove that that's really how much I cost them. They were saying I cost the government 3.7, but they can't prove the amount. So they dropped that as well. So no restitution, just 5 years probation.
That's an epic fail by the prosecutors.
They weren't very happy.
No, but they clearly didn't do their homework
Right.
and do what they needed to do, which is very unlike federal prosecutors.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are clean from coke for 4 years. Let's go back 3 years ago.
Okay.
You go to Miami.
Yeah. So, Miami and Vegas were my they're my Achilles heel, I guess.
And this is 2022.
So this would have been in 22.
You're medicated. You're feeling good.
I did, but I went on a trip with my buddy to Miami, and we're drinking. We're staying somewhere. So I messed up with my environment because there's a big Coke plate just like at this guy's house, and it's just right there in front of me. I hadn't really had that, something in that close of proximity right there. So. Yep. Yeah, I definitely messed up over the weekend. That was the last time I did coke though, because again, I had a bad outcome. I kind of went off the rails a little bit. I blacked out. We were staying in Fort Lauderdale actually, but I woke up on a sidewalk in Miami, like an hour away. I guess I was kind of close to Club Space. So I heard later I was trying to go to Space, but I puked and fell asleep on the sidewalk. And I ended up I also had a sprained knee. So I'm like, I can't freaking do this anymore, So yeah, I had to get a cab back an hour, $100-something cab, sprained knee, puke all over me. So I'm like, David, you can never do coke again. And that was the last time I've done it, was like 3 years ago.
Okay. So you had the relapse, full-blown relapse in Fort Lauderdale / Miami. And all right, so 3 years, congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing.
Thank you.
You have a lot of different things going on now in your life. You wrote a book as well.
I did.
What do you attribute your success to over the past 3 years? What changes have you made?
Yeah. So I think the story I think where I'd want to go with that is life was not easy life wasn't easy for me after I got fired from work. And other felons will understand this. I could not get a job. I was refused by Uber. I'm refused by DoorDash. So I was making, over $200K as a financial advisor, and now I can't get a job doing anything basically. So I'm starting to run low on money. And I finally took a delivery driver job. That job actually was paying like $120 a day, but then after gas, I'm making about $100 a day. So it was just a complete change of life. From there, though, Amazon refused me at first, but because I had the delivery job, and 3 different Amazon delivery stations refused me, but the 4th one accepted me. So then I'm making like $19.25 as a delivery driver for Amazon. But I think what got me, and it's in the summer heat in Texas. So it's 100-degree heat. I'm delivering boxes. But what got me through is, I guess it would have been also in 2023 before all this went down. I decided that I wanted to change my life and I wanted it to be different. I knew I've been through so much with my mental health and everything I've been through that I decided my new purpose in life was to share my story to help others who were struggling. And that's what really got me through all these really rough times is I didn't know how I was going to do that, right? I didn't know how I was going to share my story, but I was like, but while I'm delivering for Amazon, while I'm doing all this stuff, I'm going to Toastmasters 2 to 3 times a week to practice my public speaking. Because at first I'm like, okay, I might want to be a mental health advocate and do public speaking. I'm doing that. I'm starting to write my book. The way I look at things is I didn't know what I was going to be best at. So I wanted to go through like every open door and see where they went. So I'm kind of taking every opportunity I can to work towards this new goal of helping other people that are struggling. And that's kind of where I was starting to post on social media at that time. And I think I had like 30 followers on TikTok and not much of a presence on Instagram. But I thought that public speaking would be what would take off. I was hoping at least, but the social media is where more people like started to resonate. And I told you this earlier, but I did something pretty crazy before my sentencing. I like to go big or go home. So I was like, I'm going to make a video on the way to my sentencing in the airport and just document that journey because I don't think most people do that. So I documented all that, and that's kind of when things started taking off, and I started really sharing my story and helping people on social media. So that's actually been a big way. I finished my book, and that's been exciting to be able to share my book with a bunch of different people. It briefly hit like the #1 bipolar book in the world. So I got really excited about that. So yeah, it's been amazing to, I'm no longer delivering anymore, but I've had so many opportunities start to come to me to share my story. And it's been a hell of a ride, but I feel, finally I've found my purpose and I've found meaning in life, and I couldn't be happier.
What's the name of your book?
It's Manic in Miami.
Manic in Miami. And where can people get your book?
It's going to be on Amazon is the best place to get it, or the link on my social media bio.
When did you drop the book?
I dropped the book 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was #1 in the world?
It hit #1 bestseller. I think they do it off a certain time frame.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first weekend it was out. I got lucky because I had my social media with people buying it, but then people did an article for me, people.com.
Yeah.
And that went viral. So a lot of people from People bought it. So it hit #1 for like one day of that weekend for sales. But I was like, yes, I can, at least, because there's some OG bipolar books that I love. And I just thought it was really cool to be up there with them.
Well, I want to correct you. You said you got lucky. You didn't get lucky.
You're right. That's a good point.
I think you have shifted your purpose and you're helping other people. When you start shifting your purpose and you help people, good things happen. Dude, you put the work in, you wrote the book, you have your story, you pulled yourself out from the grips of addiction, and other people can learn a lot from your story. Do you believe in God?
I do. So that's definitely another part. So I did come back to, I look at it much differently than how I was raised, but yeah, I'm a Christian. I have a relationship with God. I go to Red Rocks Church in Austin. So that's definitely been a huge part also, as my faith has helped me get through a lot of this as well.
Dude, that's awesome. Well, congratulations. And I do appreciate, again, you taking the trip out here. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram and TikTok. It's at Bipolar Guy Loving Life.
Oh my God.
I know, that's ridiculous.
At Bipolar
Guy
Loving Life.
Yeah.
All one word, essentially.
Yeah. And the reason I chose that handle and what I'm passionate about is Do I always love life? No. Do I still struggle. Like it's not perfect when you get on your meds. You have to put in a lot of work still. So I don't ever want people to think that, but I call it loving life because loving life is a choice. Yeah. And I've chosen to make the best of my life. And I called it that even while I was working at Amazon. And, not in a good place at all, because I was like, it's all about, life's all about perspective. And
it is.
I was like, I'm going to look at this as in the best possible way. So while I'm driving, I'm listening to different podcasts. While I'm driving for Amazon, I'm becoming the best version of myself, while I'm doing all this. So yeah, I think loving life is a choice. And that's why I call it that. I definitely have my bad days, but my perspective is, I'm going to make the most of my life. I'm going to make it an epic adventure, and it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you again for coming out, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you having me on.